Hello and welcome to the Building Sciology Potty, where we talk about better buildings to live and breathe in. Today my guest is Cindy Angel. She is building a house with her husband Shane in a place called Lake Caddai. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
yeah, great. Lake Caddai is in the mid-north coast, just south of Port Macquarie. Cindy is a thermal performance assessor by trade with a building design background, and I'm really stoked to have her on the show and to talk about her house build, how it's gone, wins and losses, what you've learned, and just hear a bit about it. So welcome, Cindy.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
No worries at all. It's my pleasure. So please tell us about your house. What was the inspiration behind designing your own home, and tell us a bit about the journey.
Oh, it's been quite the journey. I never thought I'd actually be designing my own home. I actually had a career transition back in 2019 and decided I wanted to study building design. This is when we were living in Melbourne, and it just all made sense for me, and it was a really great course. And within, a couple of weeks, I was already learning about things like condensation management and insulation and, sustainability and all this kind of stuff. And then, a couple of years later, after COVID, got sick of being locked down in Melbourne, we decided to move closer to my parents up on the mid-north coast. And that's when I started studying thermal performance assessment, and we found this block that we wanted to build on. We were building a duplex with a volume builder at the time up here. So it was interesting going through that process and seeing how little control we had over the process. And I could see all of these things that I would have liked to have done differently, that I just didn't have the opportunity to do in that kind of process. So that's really why we wanted to design our own place, and why, I ended up drafting the plans myself, and used all that knowledge that I'd gained through the building design education, and then the NatHERS assessor stuff during that design process. And it gave me more control over what was happening with the design, what I could test. It was a much more fluid process, being able to test things out and, see what was working, what wasn't, what would work for us, what we liked, what we didn't. It just gave us a lot more control over that process. And it's been an incredible journey, and I love it. Absolutely love this whole process. It's stressful, it's challenging, there's lots of hurdles, and I probably wouldn't draft my plans myself again, but that took a really long time. That took a lot of time, but it was great. I learned so much through the process that has helped me be better at what I do. So that was kind of the inspiration, and we really wanted to design a home that would support us, that would actually, be a bit of an example of what could be achieved, particularly in this climate zone. Coming from Melbourne, where we talked about all that, sustainability and stuff so quickly, coming up here, it was like deer in headlights, most of the time when I was talking about, why don't you put insulation in your internal walls? Or, why don't you put extra insulation in the external walls? Or what about, cavities, ventilation cavities? What do you do about condensation? Oh, no, you don't need to worry about that. We live in a great climate. It's so beautiful here all the time. Why would you worry? That kind of stuff is what we get. So it was like, I understand how that's happened here, and we do have a lot of quick builds, a lot of volume builds are happening. There's a lot of new developments happening around Port Macquarie, so they've got a bit of a foothold here. So they do things their own way, and so challenging that process has been interesting, but it's definitely possible. There's lots of people here that want to do better. So yeah, that was one of the other main reasons, you know, the inspiration for doing it this way was to really challenge that process and show how we can build better in this climate.
That I'm stuck on something you said right at the start. Can you just go back? You said that when you started your building design studies, you were learning about condensation and energy efficiency really quickly.
Yeah.
Is that, where did you study?
I studied at Box Hill TAFE down in Melbourne, and I think within the first 2 weeks, we had a pro-climber representative come to the TAFE and actually do because I was studying at night, I was working at the time, so I was studying at night. He came and did like a presentation over the dinner break one night, and I was just like, yeah, that all makes sense. Like, why isn't everybody doing this? And I think that was my experience
incredible.
the whole way through the education was like, why isn't everybody doing things this way? This just all makes sense.
I know, right?
So then coming up here and sort of seeing how people aren't doing that it was a real eye-opening challenge.
Yeah, I am really really astounded because I think Box Hill Institute is where the Passive House courses were run out of, or maybe still are being run out of. So maybe there's a collaboration there between the Passive House. The fact that you had somebody from ProClimate come and talk to you actually really shocks me. I'm really, really pleased. Pleased but surprised. Sorry, excuse me. I mean, I learnt about all of this stuff. I did a diploma at TAFE as well. And the number of architects I've talked about who learn nothing about this stuff during their whole 5-year architecture degree still blows me away. I can't, I mean, they learn about a lot of other things. But yeah, the fact that it's not taught in architecture school and the fact that it's taught at TAFE, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like when I actually had this career transition and I decided that this is the industry that I want to be working in, I had that kind of choice. You know, do I spend 6 years doing an architecture degree, and I've got degrees in other things, but I'd basically be going back to doing a bachelor's degree in a completely different area. Do I spend 6 years doing that, or do I go to TAFE and do this diploma in building design? And that was it came down to really the content. Like, I actually really liked the content of the TAFE course a lot better because it was much more practical. There was so much more construction elements in that, and like, it doesn't cover everything. Obviously, there's loads more that you learn on site and working with builders, but there was so much more that I was exposed to in that, and services and bushfire assessment. I got a taste of everything. Surveying, like the whole bit. You get a taste of everything, which was perfect for me. I've got a very hungry brain. I like to learn as much as possible. So, I was supplementing that TAFE course with loads of other things during that time as well. So, yeah, really just loading myself up as much as possible with, sustainability courses from the uni at TAS, or, interior design courses online, or, bits and pieces from here and there. And, just found some really incredible communities of people that have, I've continued learning from for, years. So it's been really good.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I have had quite a similar journey. I had a sort of I wasn't until my late 20s, early 30s that I started studying this. And unlike you, like as soon as I got a wind of this stuff, I was not doing extra courses, but I was getting I found out about earth ships, and I went and did some experience on an earth ship, and I found out about this tiny home project that was being built. So I went and helped them out for a weekend, and I was just same hungry brain, just like more. And I found a lot of satisfaction in that.
Yeah, cool.
So you've moved to the mid-north coast. You decided you don't like the way these builders are doing it and you want to do it yourself. Do you, by your face,
that's probably a
do you
stretch.
regret that decision?
No, I have a builder and he's amazing. It was more the design element, I guess. It's just, when you go to these volume builders, and look, there's some fabulous volume builders out there. I'm not saying that everybody's bad. It's just that, they don't even consider orientation. You walk into the door and they say, "Oh, what floor plan do you like?" And, "What block have you got?" Bang, we'll stick it on there and away we go. And, it's just never going to work that way. So, and I'm hoping that, with the new changes, with the 7-star requirements and that kind of stuff, that kind of thing will eventually change and they have to start asking more questions. But, there's just this cookie cutter kind of experience that, just from what I've seen from other friends that have gone through that process as well, it just doesn't hit the mark in terms of both the best energy efficiency that you can get out of your block, but also the best experience of a home as well. I'm a firm believer that the homes you live in have a direct impact on how you show up in the world. So who you are as a person. I've lived in some awful houses in my life, and it has an impact on your mental health, your physical health, all of these things. So, having a home that is built to be comfortable, to be calm, to support you and your well-being, that's going to be good for society. And so that's sort of why I had the career change that I did. So, I really want to push that agenda, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I admire that. So take us through the process of designing your home and getting it to site.
So, we bought this block in June 2021. So what are we now? We're almost June 2025. So it's been a 4-year process almost. As soon as we bought the block, I went to work, did the climate study, assessed what the constraints were and that kind of thing, and started formulating the plan of what we wanted. So that design process probably took a good 6 months. And I found our builder during that time. So there was actually only one builder up here at that stage that was kind of talking sustainability and energy efficiency kind of language. So it was a pretty easy choice. And he's been fabulous. He's been so great. He met with me, during the design process to, talk through things. It wasn't a formal process. There's a PAC process that I know Amelia Lee talks a lot about, that, you can engage a builder. You pay to engage the builder during that process to collaborate. But this was an informal kind of process. And it was great because we had that connection, and we've had that relationship sort of built up during that process. The DA probably took about 6 months to go through, and during that time, the engineering kind of got done. So up here, there seems to be an accepted process that you tend to put your design in for DA approval before you've got your engineering, because it takes so long. So it's like, oh no, just get it in, you get your engineering done whilst that's happening. Had my time again, I'd probably do it very differently, because the engineering changes the construction elements and therefore informs the design in lots of different ways. So yeah, that I would do differently. But anyway, that's what we did. And so we started building in September 2023. So we laid the slab in September 2023. So we're about 16 months in now. And I'm hoping we'll be at practical completion by Easter. So, fingers crossed.
Hmm. So you're nearly there.
We're nearly there. We're nearly there.
Awesome. So you mentioned before we press record here that you were using the NatHERS software because you did your thermal assessor training, and you were using the NatHERS software yourself to inform your design to make sure that you were hitting the mark. Could you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually was studying during this sort of design phase. So to actually get it into DA approval and, get the certificate and that kind of thing, I did have to engage a different assessor to do that for me. And it was that in itself was really interesting because I had a very different service kind of relationship with different assessors. So I actually ended up engaging probably about 4 along that journey because I just was getting such a different experience that whole time. And I knew
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I knew the kind of service and relationship that I wanted, but I just kind of wasn't getting it. There wasn't that kind of fluid collaboration during that design phase. I think a lot of traditional assessors are very used to doing those transactional compliance certificates kind of right at the end of the design phase to get it off into council, and it's like, do whatever you need to do just to get this passed, chuck a ceiling fan in, do this, do that, which you can't really do. That's not going to cut it anymore, thankfully. So yeah, it was a varying degree between that kind of experience and, a bit more of a collaborative, consultative kind of experience. So thankfully, I actually got my software training in time so that I could actually start testing things out myself. So eventually I'd be like, instead of trying to ask this assessor to say, what do you think? How should we improve this? That kind of stuff. I could test it out and go, look, just put these specs in and give me the result. So
That's interesting. So you had sort of control on your end. Did you find that the assessors that you employed to do your energy modelling for you were getting similar results to you or to each other, or were they all different? Or did you not actually go to the end of the process with each of them? Like, how did that?
Yep, great question. They actually differed slightly depending on the software that they used.
And did they all use, yeah, explain a little bit more about that because I'm not sure that it's quite well understood or it's not well understood how energy compliance works, what the different softwares are, what the different methods of compliance are.
Yeah.
So if you could explain your experience in that would
Yeah,
be really,
sure.
really interesting. Yeah.
So there's a number of different compliance pathways, and it's dependent on what state you're in. So I'll just talk about the NatHERS sort of assessment pathway. So in terms of actually getting a NatHERS or a National Energy Rating certificate, there's a number of different softwares that you can use. There's Accurate, there's Hero, you're testing me now.
First Rate 5.
First Rate 5, thank you. And then there's one more. There's another one. But yeah, they're the 3 main ones. And they're very different. Each of them are very different tools to use. So each assessor sort of decides which tool that they want to use most, and they train to use that tool. So they're people using these tools as well. So the way that they use that tool is always going to be slightly different. So I think you've got to remember that also. So they're always going to be a slightly different result. It's not just a machine spitting things out. And I think that's where the beauty is in this as well. It can be human error, that things are different, but you're engaging a person to actually use a tool that they've been trained to use to help inform a design that you're trying to optimize. So, you know, that person has to have a level of flexibility and knowledge in how that tool works to be able to help you optimize the design that you're trying to get over the line. So, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, their level of technical understanding of the software, of the construction, and also their own integrity comes into play as well, because
Yeah.
things can be done on these assessments that don't get picked up by anyone that can benefit them. So yeah, I was really interested to know if they were getting different results, because I think that like 7 stars sounds like it's a line in the sand and everyone's going to get the same result out of the same set of plans, but it's not necessarily true at all.
No,
Really
it's
nice to have
not.
a bit of a
No. Yeah, it's not true. And I think that's the shift between, you know, looking at this as just purely a compliance tool, or looking at it as actually a consultative tool that can be used to help, you know, build better homes. So, you know, and it's not perfect. There are failings in the systems, as there are in anything. So you really got to rely on the expertise of the person that's using that tool to help you do what you do. It's the same when you're engaging a builder. You know, you're trusting the expertise of that person to give you an end result. So, yeah, it's finding the right people to be part of that team during that design phase to help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And yes, when you're talking about compliance, it is 7 stars and over. And that's because you have to draw a line in the sand. It has to be drawn somewhere. So that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's move on from the whole NatHERS topic. Let's talk about your design in your home and your sort of goals with the home. So you wanted to incorporate healthy building principles and better energy efficiency in your home. So how did you do that? How did you learn about it, and how did you implement it?
Yeah. So the energy efficiency stuff, obviously, I trained as an NatHERS assessor to be able to do that, and it let me test out things like, you know, thermal mass. Like, you know, if there's areas in the house that we're getting too hot or too cold, you know, what happened if I put a bit of thermal mass in there, or what happened if I made the window smaller, or what happened if I changed the specs to that window. So yeah, being able to do that meant that the design was always going to be a high performing house in terms of energy efficiency. So I was very comfortable with that. In terms of the healthy home aspect, like, again, it was kind of a bit of a no-brainer for me. Like, we always knew I'm a migraine sufferer, and I have been ever since my mid-20s. And so I'm super sensitive to light, especially artificial light. I'm super sensitive to smells and, you know, just all sorts of stuff. It's really annoying. But, you know, that just leads me to be very conscious of what's going in my house, you know, what materials we're using, and how well this home is going to dry out and not have mould in the walls, you know, because that's a big trigger. So I learnt...
Mold specifically is a trigger for you, Cindy?
Oh,
Are you sensitive
pretty
to
much
mold?
everything is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Depends what day it is. No.
Yeah.
No, I think definitely I can smell. You ask any true migraine sufferer, you can smell mold a mile away. Like,
Yeah,
we should be mold detector dogs, I reckon.
That's a super skill.
It is
Sixth
a super
sense.
skill. I've walked into rooms and just gone, wow, what is that? And nobody else can smell it. And you
Wow.
find it. It'll be under a sink or under a wall or something. Yeah, it's full on.
Yeah.
So yes, making sure that wasn't in the house is important. And, things like just air quality, the water quality. Like we're putting a whole of home water filter on the house so that, we don't have to worry about putting filter jugs in or, just everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of your question around how did I learn about that, multiple ways. I mean, there's always, just informal blog learning and podcasts and that kind of stuff. But I read Nicole Bichlama's book, which was really helpful. And I did a healthy home material course with Zara Dakota. I've done bits and pieces that have really just, you bring all of those things together and it helps inform the result.
Yep. It becomes that just sort of, again, that hungry brain thing. You just sort of keep looking and keep finding new information to particularly when it's your own home.
Yeah. So it's been a really good example of delving down lots of different rabbit holes.
Yeah. That word keeps coming up.
It's time for a quick sponsor shout out. Today's episode of the Building Sciology Poddy is proudly brought to you by our amazing sponsors, Enduro Builders and Climasure. A huge thank you to these incredible businesses for supporting the podcast and helping us spread the word about better buildings to live and breathe in. Your support makes this podcast possible. Please head over to their websites and follow their social pages.
So you had your thermal performance, you designed it yourself, you had your thermal performance iterations, you optimized it to what you and your husband wanted the house to feel like and look like. You picked your builder and you were like, great, let's do this. So I understand you did have challenges on site due to your engineering and that was out of your control. So tell us about what happened with that.
Yeah, so I think this was a result of, this kind of adage that you wait until your DA is approved to get your engineering done and then bang, off you go. Now, we engaged the engineer early in the process because, I wanted to sanity check what I was designing and make sure that, there's always multiple different ways that you can engineer a house and different things that you're doing. We've got a 2-story house with a rooftop terrace, so that was always going to be a bit of an engineering challenge. So there's multiple different ways that can occur. So I wanted to engage this engineer early so that we could talk about that and I could allow for any of those things, through the design. And so I tried. I really tried. But it was so hard to get any preliminary documentation during that process. It was kind of like, well, we'll just wait until we are at the end and bang, there you go. There's your engineering plans. And so much of what we talked about was forgotten, or there was details that were missed, so it was really frustrating. But by that stage, it was like trying to stop a freight train. So, if I had have kind of gone, nah, let's start again, we'd probably only have laid the slab, last month. So it's hard to know when to just keep pushing or when to just, let things go. So that has been a challenge. And one of the biggest things that held us up was we've got some concrete balconies on, obviously, the first level. And the way he engineered that was the concrete actually returns into the frame. So basically that meant that the top level frame couldn't get finished and therefore the roof couldn't go on until these concrete balconies had been formed up and laid, and then the frame could get built on top of that. So that's essentially what held us up the most, because getting the details on those balconies was challenging. So yeah, that was months. That took months. And basically that meant that our frame was standing proud out in the rain for a very, very wet summer, over 23, 24. And yeah, so lots of stuff got very, very, very wet. We tried our best to cover it up, because the yellow tongue flooring had already been put on, but we had a stair void in there, so the whole thing couldn't get covered up. We tried, but the wind would just blow it straight off. So, you know, it's just perfect storm of lots of things. So it was devastating. Every time it rained, it was just like, no.
But, I bet.
Yeah, so it was pretty hard.
So your yellow tongue flooring, were you able to get rid of that and replace it?
Well, some of it, yes.
Before you put the frames on,
Yeah, so unfortunately, there were some frames that had already been built on it, and it still was, you know, getting lots of rain, and we couldn't get the roof on, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, there was some that were sort of stuck under the frames. So when we did get the roof on and everything got wrapped beautifully, and we've dried everything out. I mean, I bought a moisture meter, so we've tested everything to the nth degree, and I've, you know, done mold testing, all sorts of things. But we made sure everything was dry, and the yellow tongue flooring that had swelled and was just awful, that all got replaced, which is fabulous. But yeah, there's some of it that you can't, like, it's just impossible. So we're at the point now where when the plasterers are done, we're actually going to sand the top layer of the yellow tongue and just freshen it all right up, because some of it didn't, like the water didn't get all the way in. So yeah, we'll try and get as much off as we can, and then lay the flooring. So
so what kinds of methods did you use to try and reduce the risk of the mold that had grown on the frames?
Yeah, and that was a really interesting process, I should say. And I'm just so grateful that the builder was open to the discussion, because there's lots of builders that wouldn't be. And, you know, we had to be very realistic about what was possible in that process. I mean, there was some building biologists that I spoke to that were just like, oh, you're just going to have to replace everything. Knock it all down, start again. I'm like, that's just not possible.
That's not realistic or reasonable or cost effective.
This is the real world, and that's just not going to happen.
Thanks for your help, mate.
Thanks for your help. And as much as I appreciate that,
you get some real catastrophizers, I think.
Yeah. So we had to kind of mediate that a bit. Yeah. And that was the hard part, because we were so nervous about it, and it is a serious problem. So how do you find that middle ground, that realistic process that's actually going to work for you? And I think that's different for every single scenario. And so for us, we sat down, we talked about it. And the builder kept saying, it'll be okay, it'll dry out. And I'm like, no, it won't. It never will. I could, like, you can hit panic stations. And in retrospect, yes, it did dry out, but it definitely still needed help. So our medium ground was, once it was all dried, to moisture test everything, which we did. And then I purchased some sort of self-testing mold kits, those little tongue things that you can buy. And I tested multiple different areas.
Like tapes?
They're like little gel tongue things.
Where'd you get them from?
That's a really good question. I knew you were going to ask me that. I'll have to look it up and I'll send it to you. I will. All right. I'll send it to you. All right.
And for anyone interested, I'll link it in the show notes when Cindy sends me the info.
I should have written that down. So then the agreement was that they would sand as much as they could, like all the really bad spots. They'd sand that back as much as they could. And then for everything else, we got a guy in to do fogging. So the entire frame got fogged, just for that little bit of extra, comfort that we'd at least tried to get into those spots that we couldn't physically get to.
Yeah. So when you say you sanded it off, did you hand sand it?
No, the boys did
You
it.
sanded it off?
Yeah, the team did it with like the physical sander,
Like the tool, like the power tool
the machine.
sanders?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've seen some people like literally with sandpaper or wire brushes getting into, that sounds like not fun.
That's not fun. I tried the whole scrubbing method.
Yeah.
Like, scrubbing with soap and all that sort of stuff. We had one ceiling beam actually that was one of the worst bits because it was under the rooftop terrace and that just kept getting hammered. And it's like, okay, once everything kind of got sealed up, I'm like, I'm going to test this beam. So I sectioned it off and I did, all right, I'm going to scrub it with just soapy water and I'm going to scrub that bit with bleach and I'm going to spray that with something else and we're going to sand that bit. And then I got the mould testers and we tested them all. And
which one worked? And which one didn't work?
The sanding and the bleach worked. The scrubbing not so much, I think, because you're actually scrubbing with water. So there's water in the soap, so that didn't work that well. And it was labour intensive. I was never going to do that for the whole frame. And
no.
What was the other one? The spray that we tried. That didn't really work either.
Interesting. So the marketing companies don't necessarily tell the truth on their mold products. Is that what you're saying?
Diplomatically? No.
Putting words in your mouth there.
Totally. Oh, look, every situation's different. And that I truly do believe every situation's different and every piece of timber is different. That's the other point I should make actually. Post-COVID, the actual timber stock that we were getting was very different. Like when we put the frame up, within a couple of weeks, there'd be one stud that would be all black and awful and the next stud would be fine. So the actual timber stock itself, was really different.
Wow. So you ordered some of your timber before COVID and some of it after? Is that what you mean?
No, I think it was...
Is there a...
Well, I think there was a big discussion, during COVID and post-COVID about the availability of timber and, there was a lot of fast-growing timbers that were coming through and there was still a lot of older stock that had been kind of hanging around. So I think it just got all mished up together and the quality of what we were getting was just vastly different, but in the same batch. So that it's definitely better now. I've been looking at, different builds that have been happening now. It's same timber, but yeah, the quality of it's definitely changed. It's much better now.
Interesting. That's very interesting. So that is just so frustrating that you put so much work and effort and time into making sure your healthy, energy efficient home was going to be just right. And you even had the right builder who was on board with everything you wanted and all of these things were going right and then you still had delays.
Murphy's
Law. That is something that you just couldn't have foreseen.
Yeah. Yep.
So the engineering, you said that they wrapped the concrete. I'm not quite sure what you mean, but they somehow tied the concrete back into the frame, whatever they decided to do there. Was there a way that could have been done differently to speed up the process that you learned about afterwards, or?
Yeah, I think because we had two choices sort of throughout the process. And we could have done it in concrete, and we could have done it in, lightweight timber framing. And I think if we had done it in the timber framing, that process would have been a lot smoother. But, the concrete does provide a lot more structural integrity. We're building on sand, so there's lots of reasons why the concrete is good. And I think we could have avoided that sort of tie-in to the frame if we had had some concrete posts in different places, that kind of thing. But
so was it cantilevered?
No, there's kind of hard to explain. Oh, it's kind of cantilevered out off the base frame. So if this is the external wall of underneath, it's kind of cantilevered. There is corner posts, but the entirety of that weight needed to sit on something on the base back here. So it's sat on that external frame, and because our top frame was directly above that, it wasn't set back. It was directly above that wall. We basically had to wait until that concrete was in, and then we can put that external wall on top. So I guess lesson learned, step that external wall back a bit, and it probably would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. So do you know was it just a matter of, like, in terms of how long it took the engineer to get back to you, was that a workflow issue on their part, or was that were they waiting for something, or was it do you know what happened?
Yeah. Oh, look, he's a very clever engineer, and he's like, this house is not going to move ever. Like, it's been very, very solidly built.
It better not.
So I'm grateful for that. I am grateful for that. But the process had some issues. So the communication and I think the documentation process that he was following at the time was definitely lacking, and they're just so busy. Like we don't have enough engineers up here. They are absolutely flat strap. So, it's hard. It's hard for them. It's hard for us because, anyone that needs details out of them, you got to wait. So, it's just not a perfect world.
Yeah. And so you said that there was details forgotten and things like that. So the whole record keeping thing was a bit lax at the time. Yeah. Probably due to being
busyness.
super busy.
Yeah. And I think, when you're that busy, you're trying out different things, utilizing different resources or trying to outsource certain things, or, you're trying different stuff, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like you said, we're only human. We're all people. Sometimes things do just fall over a little bit.
Yeah, and I think you got to pick your battles. Like it's like I was saying, it's like a freight train when it gets to that stage, and it's like, well, you've got to decide whether this is something you can work around and keep moving forward, or whether it really is a game changer and you need to stop and rethink.
So in terms of that process, is there anything you would advise other people to do instead of what you did? I mean, you talked about your engineering, getting that before DA approval. What sort of knock-on effect would that have had? And, what would you tell other people to do?
I think if I and I will, we do this custom process again, I would engage an engineer, a consultative engineer, that would provide preliminary documentation during that design phase. So once I had a pretty solid kind of concept, I would find an engineer that could give me sort of that preliminary documentation with a few different options of how to do certain things. Because it changes the way that you, design the house, depending on certain choices that you make. And I think if those things are decided and allowed for that early, it just means that the whole process can be a lot smoother.
Yeah. So do you have what could you give us an example? So what design changes did your engineering affect that you had to amend?
Okay, a good example would be the floor joists. So for, obviously the mid floor, we put in a HRV system, so that needed 100 mil clearance for the ductwork to run through, and we wanted 4, I think it was, in our floor. So I'd allowed for that in the design, and we'd spoken about that, during the engineering, and we talked about using, long span timbers with the webbing and that kind of stuff to allow for that to flow through really easily. And then all of a sudden they became LVLs, and, there's these solid kind of 300 timber beams running through the house that you can't drill 100 mil sections in. So then you have to decide, well, what am I going to do with all these ductwork? Like, where's that going to go? Are we going to drop the ceiling by 100, 150 mil to allow for that, which then has an impact on the window heights and all sorts of different things? Like, it's a big flow-on effect. Or do you find, is there another way that we can work around this? So, stuff like that.
And did you end up dropping your ceiling, or did you end up going back to changing your floor structure?
No, we didn't. The floor stayed the way it was. So we've got the LVLs. We were very creative in where we put the HRV system. So it actually went from being downstairs in the laundry to upstairs in the storeroom. And then we're running the ductwork mainly all the way up into the ceiling across the top level, and then down through some cavities where we could find space into the rooms where it needs to. And then downstairs we do have a little kind of roof section down along the side of sort of the lounge, dining, guest room area. So we've actually put insulation sort of in the ceiling joist, but also in the roof, under the roof sheeting, so that you've got an insulated cavity in that roof, and we've run the ductwork through there. So I checked all of that with the HRV engineers to make sure that they were okay with that, because it's a bit different. So yeah, they were all cool. So I'm like, yeah, let's just do that.
And that's much better than changing window heights and faffing around with all of that.
Yeah, that's it. So, it wasn't ideal, but we found a workaround, and that's just what you work with.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So your professional career, Cindy, you've gone down the thermal assessor route, and you started your building design diploma. So you're working for other people doing thermal assessing. What would you? How has this experience affected your perspective on building design, and what would you advise your clients?
Take your time. Like, actually, it's such an exciting process, I think, designing and building your own home, and it's filled with anxiety and all that sort of thing as well. And you want to get it started and get it done as quickly as possible. It always takes longer than you expect. And that's not just the construction phase. I think if you actually take the time during that design phase to really make sure that this home is going to be what you want it to be, but also as good as it can be in terms of energy efficiency and that kind of stuff, that pays dividends down the track. So surrounding yourself with the right people during that design phase, it's really important, really, really important. And to, take your time with that and engage people and ask questions and test things out, and just take your time until you're really comfortable with what you're actually looking at.
I think that's absolutely crucial. Uh, what you said about, taking your time and getting the right people around you, because you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm.
so as you start to uncover these different things, all of a sudden you're learning more and more as you go along the process, and then getting the right people, the right builder, the right energy assessor, the right products, the right suppliers, the right, the right everything, the right installers, the right trades, in order to get your sort of dream realized in the way you
Mm.
envisage it. It's so important, and not to just drink the Kool-Aid. Is that the right expression? Not to just
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
what everybody tells you,
yeah,
or what Joe Blogs tells you about how things should be done or how it's always been done.
yeah,
Um, Always sort
yeah.
of listen to that inner voice and follow it and lean into the questions.
Yes, absolutely. And, skill yourself up. Like, and not everybody's got time to do that and or the
Mm.
inkling to do that. But, just having a little bit of knowledge about how the process works and just gives you that comfort in being able to ask the questions that you should be asking. And, yeah, just not being spoon-fed
Mm.
what everybody wants you to believe, because that's just the easier way for them to do it.
Mm.
There's a lot of stuff that we have challenged our team on in this process, but they've been eating it up. They've been great. Like, they love learning new things and doing things differently. So I'm very grateful for that. But not everybody has that kind of outlook and just pushes back on things that are different and, oh, that's too hard. So yeah,
Yeah.
just needing to know
Yeah,
that.
I'm quite emphatic. Yeah, I'm quite emphatic with anyone I speak to who's new to this process. One of the sort of most sort of the strongest piece of advice I give, apart from installing everything correctly and doing all that sort of product research, is make sure that your builder is willing and ready, willing, and able to
Yeah,
learn. If they
yeah,
don't
for
already
sure.
understand, they have to be ready, willing, and able. Otherwise, you are opening yourself up to so much unnecessary stress.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's so
literally
true.
being your own site supervisor. Um,
Which I have been. I've been on site pretty regularly.
yeah, I'm sure you have. So, what is one of the features in your home that you are most proud of or most looking forward to experiencing?
There are so many. There are so many things. We are currently living in a rental that, um, it's big and all that sort of stuff, but it is designed so badly, and there's one wall that just literally fills up with water every time it rains. Uh, it's so hot. Like, we're battling this house every single day just to be comfortable, and so I
What do
think
you mean the wall fills
I'm.
up with water?
Oh, it's a long story, but there's a
That
weep
sounds
hole.
awful.
Yeah, there's a side like it kind of sits on a bit of a hill, and the side at the top of the hill, they've put in a concrete path that actually pretty much overlaps the weep hole in the brick. So when it rains and that concrete all floods, all that water just goes straight into the wall, and it doesn't come
Oh
back out
my
again.
goodness.
You'd love it.
Oh
You'd love it.
wow.
Come and test for all the mold.
Oh wow. That sounds yucky.
It's pretty horrible. So, we're just every day we're like, oh, we won't have to do this when we're in the new house. Everything's just going to be easier. And
Yeah.
yeah, we feel like we're fighting this house constantly just to stay comfortable. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. So I think I am most proud about the fact that we have been so conscious in everything we've done in this house, whether that be the materiality that we've chosen, the way that the house has been designed, the orientation, the functionality of it, the colours that we've chosen. Like, everything's designed to be calming and rejuvenating. And all the electricals we've been really conscious about. Like, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, we're very conscious of EMF exposure. We've done all sorts of things to reduce that. So, yeah, we're really proud of all of the things that we've done to Yeah, hopefully for this to be a real haven. That's what we're trying to achieve. So we'll see.
Oh, that sounds really, really nice. You mentioned EMFs. We haven't actually, this wasn't part of my questions, but I am going to ask you to elaborate. We're at the end of our
I knew
conversation,
you
so
would.
but let's just elaborate a little bit on, just give us a couple of examples of things you've done, please, if
Yeah,
you wouldn't
sure,
mind.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it was actually a last minute decision to do this. But again, EMFs I'm very sensitive to as a migraine sufferer. So I wanted to eliminate those as much as possible in the house. So we have been very conscious about where power points are in our house. We've been very clear with our electricians, who have been amazing, about where we wanted any 240 volt lines to be running, like no lines behind the beds, away from the middle of the bedrooms as much as possible. So they've been very, like, we mapped out where all the cabling was going to go before they even started. So they were really great. And then in terms of, we also wanted smart home capabilities. I did not want Wi-Fi all through my house to allow for that. So we actually made the decision to invest in hardwiring smart home stuff. So we've got a C-bus system running in the house, which basically means all of our lighting runs off C-bus, which, yeah, just reduces the dirty electricity in the house. And we've got Wi-Fi points that we can turn off at night. So we've got little switches that can turn things off. So at night we press one button and all the Wi-Fi turns off. All the smart home stuff's still hardwired, so that's still available. So yeah, we've been really lucky in finding a very, very good team. We've got a smart home designer that I came across from Coffs Harbour, who's been absolutely brilliant, and our electricians have been amazing. So yeah, we've been very lucky.
Wow, it sounds like you have been really lucky with your team.
Yeah, they've been great.
That's so great. Yeah, awesome. All right. I won't put you through any more questions except for one. My last final question is, what is the one thing that you want people to know?
I think one of the things that I would love people to know is that the realm of energy efficient, thermally comfortable, healthy homes doesn't just belong to those that have a bigger budget that can follow an architecturally designed, custom built kind of process. You know, there seems to be that idea out there that that's the realm that this kind of sits within, and it's just not true. I think you can have all of those things, and you should have all of those things regardless of which pathway you follow. And in particular, you know, lots of people go for the off-the-shelf plans with, you know, a volume builder because it's seemingly cheaper or an easier process, and which, you know, it can be, but you've really got to know what you're asking for and what you should be specifying in that whole process before you sign on the dotted line for that building contract. Because once you sign that building contract, all of those specifications are locked in. You know, things like the insulation that's in your walls or the color of your cladding. I think all of those kind of things have such an impact on your long-term thermal comfort in your home. So I really want people to know that they have the power to make those choices and to ask for those things. And the way that they know what they're asking for is by engaging an energy efficiency consultant early, you know, up front, before you sign a building contract. When you're, you know, even just thinking about the idea, you know, a good energy efficiency consultant can tell you if the plan that you've fallen in love with is actually going to work on your site, or if you've got a floor plan that you love and you haven't found a site yet, what kind of orientation you should be looking for. You know, all of those things, they can really help you. So yeah, that's the one thing I'd like people to really know. And there's so many, that volume build process,
there's so often it's just not part of that conversation. So, and you know, in an ideal world, it really will be, and I'm hoping that the future is like that. But up until that point, it's consumer demand. You know, that is the way that things change way quicker than legislation. So if people know what they are asking for, then things will change for the better. I've seen so many people, you know, get so excited about their homes and, you know, have it volume built and you know, it's a beautiful looking home, and they move into it and it's just unlivable. Like they literally can't live in these houses. So, you know, spend the time up front actually thinking about those things, and the way you orient a house doesn't cost you anymore. You know, there's things that are not expensive that will really pay dividends in the long-term livability of your house. If your builder isn't amenable to that, then you have the power as the customer to go and engage someone independently and have someone have a look at that combination of site and plan and specifications for you. You have the power. Obviously, we need more housing, and that needs to be done quickly, but yeah, you don't want to build bad houses just because it needs to be done quickly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Cindy, for joining me today and answering all my questions and having a lovely chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
It's
been lovely.
Good. If anyone wants to follow Cindy and Shane's journey, you can find them on Instagram at shindy'sbeachhouse_build. Cindy is really good at documenting all of their ups and downs, highs and lows, and all the exciting details on the project. So I hope you get in by Easter, as you are hoping to. My fingers are crossed for you.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the final reveal.
Yeah, me too. I will be happily sharing that when it happens.
Very exciting. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Cindy.
Thanks so much, Jess.
Okay, bye.
That is all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. There will be another episode in a fortnight, so if you would like to listen into the types of conversations that I have all the time, please subscribe on your chosen platform. Rate the show, leave a comment, whatever you like, share with your friends and family. I'd love for you to spread the word about the Building Sciology Potty. There's a link in the episode description where you can head to a landing page, and there are some show notes there with relevant links and a full transcript of the show as well, and also links to my socials. So if you're not already, I'd love for you to follow along there too, as I share lots of building science and building biology tips. There's also a contact page where you can send me an email or even a voice message. So if you've got questions or suggestions or guest ideas, I'd love to hear from you. I want to know what you want to know, so please get in touch with me. Thanks again. I'll be back in 2 weeks, so until then, happy healthy building.